We have 2.5 million Indians living in this country. At times the numbers have been more. Again, it is natural that you will have your concerns, your interests, your problems. And it's very useful for me to know that, to understand that, so that when I engage with the authorities, with my counterpart or with the officialdom, I have also your interests at heart. That in some way, if we as the government or I as the foreign minister or the embassy or the foreign ministry can be helpful to advance your interest, to make you more comfortable, to ensure that your requirements are met and your problems in whatever way can be addressed. I think that is also equally important. And that is why, in fact, I'm very glad that the embassy took the initiative to arrange this meeting. Right, you are literally my first engagement on this visit. Now, having said that, and I'd be very happy to, after my remarks, to actually to listen to any concerns which you people may have. It's very natural that Indians who live abroad, even though we are in a very connected world today, many, all those phones which I saw pointed at me keep you instantaneously informed of anything that happens in India. So you're probably more updated than I am. But still, you would like to know what is happening in India, a sense of the mood and the sentiment of our society. And that is also something I would like to share with you. It's been probably for the last 2.5 years, you've had very few high-level visitors from India because of the COVID. I myself had, the last time I came here was in my previous capacity. I had accompanied the Prime Minister in his visit here in 2016. Prime Minister came again in 2019. But in 2020-21, there were very, very few foreign visits that any of us did. So, in a sense, the picture I would like to present to you, in essence, is what has been happening in our country in the last 2.5 years. And the big issue, the big challenge that we faced, like everybody else, was the COVID. When the COVID first hit us in the first quarter of 2020, I don't think any of you are unaware of what was our health system at our point of time. You can honestly say that perhaps no country was prepared for it, but the countries whose health infrastructure was not developed had a bigger problem coping with the enormity of the COVID. And in 2020, in fact, the real, I would say, achievement, national achievement for us, was that a country which did not make masks, which did not make ventilators, people had not even heard this term PPE, which all of us today think is just another word. And we could not only produce what 1.3 billion people needed, but we could also set up centers for dedicated treatment of people who had come down with COVID. And we went through 2020, in fact, through very, very rapid buildup of our own capabilities. In 2021, of course, we had what was a very, very serious Delta wave. Again, I'm sure every one of you has had relatives and friends who in some form were affected. I don't think there's anybody who was unaffected by that particular wave. And there, actually we saw the strength of the Indian community. We saw the strength of the Indian community in terms of how all of you responded to the situation in our country. We saw our friendships, our international friendships also deliver at that point of time. Saudi Arabia, for example, was very helpful with supply of oxygens and with both with liquid medical oxygen as well as with containers. And that, and that is the time people speak about, friendships and relationships and international cooperation. We talk about attachment of the country to its diaspora and of the diaspora for the motherland. We saw this all demonstrated in 2021. Now, 2 years of COVID, I think the country came through the test. And what was different this time was that we were able to produce vaccines in very large numbers. So there was made in India vaccine available for 1.3 billion people. We also had our own vaccines, starting with one, but now a few more. And so this time something different took place in India, which was in terms of the vaccination. We were not a country which was left behind. We pretty much did it at the same time as everybody else. But it wasn't just that we did it. In this period, because my business did not stop, so I still found ways of traveling. And I still go to parts of the world where large numbers of people are not vaccinated. Sometimes I go to places where there are vaccines, but they have not been able to get the shots in the arm. So I want you to appreciate really the extent to which our country has risen to this challenge. Not just by responding immediately to the emergency, mass emergency medical situation which happened, but by producing the vaccines, by creating a platform, by ensuring that vaccines were delivered to the right people at the right time so that everybody got their messages on their phone saying that is where you have to go for vaccination. So the combination of, I would say, becoming the pharmacy of the world, but also the digital, in a sense, the digital innovator and leader in this situation, the two coming together has actually had a remarkable impact where the COVID was concerned. Now that's in response to the COVID. Now, a second problem which everybody faced was, of course, the economy, because everybody's economy took a hit. We ourselves went through a certain period of a complete lockdown. And so the challenge which everybody had was, how quickly do you recover? And how much do you recover? Now, here too, I would say what we have done is definitely worth studying. Many countries spent a lot of public money. Almost, I would say, like a knee-jerk, they were in a hurry to respond to the crisis situation. So they didn't, all of them necessarily use their funds, use the resources wisely. In our case, we actually focused on, first of all, creating a safety net. I don't know whether all of you are aware that through this entire period, actually, there is a program to give free rations to 80 crore people, 800 million people. No country in the world has done this. There is a program to give money in the bank accounts of 40 crore people, more than 40 crore people. Very few countries in the world have done that either. And so what happened 100 years ago when the Spanish flu came, which was as many people died of food shortages and unemployment as they did of the disease. That did not happen because one thing Prime Minister was very clear from day one, that not one person would die on his watch due to hunger. And that was something he very passionately felt, and he got it done on the ground, again using this digital backbone that we had created. Because we had done Jan Dhan Yojana, there were bank accounts into which we could put in the funds. Because there was the Aadhaar card, there was again a digital identity by which the rations could move effectively. But beyond the COVID response, there are other big changes happening in this country. That era when, what was the requirement of the people was defined in very minimal terms. That era is now behind us. We think today that it is, just giving food is not enough. It is not what I would call the basic requirement of society. So we've had actually transformative programs today underway. Programs which connect all houses to electricity. All houses, this is the scale, the big program right now we are trying to do. Connect every house with tap water, what we call Har Ghar Jal. A program actually to make sure as many people have houses as possible. So there is a big Awas Yojana and a Gramin Awas Yojana. And the idea is to support the weak and vulnerable so that the home ownership in India grows in large numbers. Programs to help the farmers, because ultimately one of the lessons of COVID was that trade got disrupted, ports got closed. We could not depend, a country like India could not depend on somebody else to feed it. So how do you actually support your farmers to grow more? But also at the same time, make sure while these programs on meeting the basic societal needs. By the way, a huge program on insurance. Today, you may be again perhaps a little surprised to know that as many as 45 crore people, 450 million, are in some way or the other an insurance beneficiary of a government program. So if you look at these numbers, 800 million people who are getting rations, 400 million people who are getting money in their bank accounts, 450 million people who are getting insurance. Today, the number of people who are getting health benefits, Jan Arogya Yojana, that is also reaching today hundreds of millions. So what was perhaps even 3-4 years ago a dream that our citizens would be educated, power, water, homes, insurance, health, that dream, that aspiration is today happening in India probably at a much faster rate than most of you imagine. But along with that, there are equally powerful efforts today to actually grow our economy, to move towards becoming a higher income country. And again, a lot of this has required a vision. It has required a very prudent management of our fiscal resources. It has required policies which have made it easier for banks to lend, for small and medium companies to get lending, even for self-employed people to get lending. How do you change the credit policy? How do you change the banking policy? How do you change the education policy? How do you change the labor policy? All these are today underway at different levels. Many of these big reforms have taken place. And the result of that you can see in two very interesting developments. One, in the year which is just over, 31st of March this year, we have posted the highest export that we have ever done. So our total exports were $670 billion. We had a trade in goods of $400 billion. And it has today, the idea of India as a trading power, that has become credible today. The second is that although many other new challenges have happened because of the Ukraine conflict, price of oil has gone up, price of food has gone up, price of shipping has gone up, insurance has gone up. But we are still very confident that India will be the fastest growing major economy in the world this year. We are confident that we will get at least 7% growth. So I share with you this picture because when I go in tomorrow to meet my Saudi counterparts, in their minds, they will be meeting the foreign minister of the 5th largest economy. Many of you would have seen the report. We have just overtaken the United Kingdom in the size of our economy. They will be meeting the foreign minister of the 5th largest economy, the foreign minister of the fastest growing major economy, the foreign minister of a country which has not just responded to the COVID challenge, but come out of it very, very strongly. One whose digital capabilities and whose health infrastructure has grown in this period, and whose ability to take care of its people abroad has also been demonstrated. Now, there are 2.5 million of you in this country. Altogether, perhaps in the world, there are 3 crore, roughly 3 crore Indians, 30 million Indians, or people of Indian origin. I want you to remember this COVID period and think of this, the Vande Bharat mission that we undertook. Because when the COVID happened, you had in this globalized world so many people who were stuck abroad. In fact, those who had homes abroad were the lucky people. There were many people who had gone as tourists, people who had gone as students, the dormitories shut down. People who went as merchant shipping, the ship discharged them in some port. People who went as air crews, they left them somewhere else. So we brought back 7 million people, 70 lakh people through Vande Bharat mission. Actually, in the history of the world, nobody has done that kind of evacuation. And it can be during COVID. It was also demonstrated during the Ukraine conflict, where more than 20,000 of our students were trapped in the middle of a conflict. And we actually moved. The Prime Minister spoke to Putin, he spoke to Zelensky. We moved heaven and earth to get those students back. So that is the India today which the world sees, which in a sense is something that, if you are from a country which is respected more, which is more relevant to the rest of the world, I think the benefit of that also goes to the community. So let me say a few words about where we stand in respect to the community. We have, particularly under Prime Minister Modi, we see the world as a global workplace. Everybody sees the world as a trading place, as a marketplace. But we also see the world as a workplace where our citizens can travel, can work, can go so legally with full protection, that if there are contracts, they get the benefits of that. So one of our big foreign policy priorities is really to ensure that our people get the right treatment abroad, that your problems are our problems. Now, obviously, there will be issues, different countries offer different kinds of challenges. I think many of the kind of issues which happen here. But I would say, as someone who has been in the Ministry of External Affairs, both as a professional, now as a minister, for more than 40 years. The kind of attention today that the government gives to the Indian community abroad, I have not seen it before. And the resources that go into it, the attention that goes into it, even I would say the emotion that goes into it, that is something of a very, very different order. I therefore want you all to understand that there are very practical ways by which we respond. We have an Indian Community Welfare Fund. We have broadened its usage. We have put into motion different ways by which we get to know of Indians in distress situations. I think you would have all seen the change even in the attitude of embassies and consulates, that they are today much more responsive, much more open, much more conscious than they were before. And that too is part of the change that India is undergoing. So these were some of the thoughts that I had. I thought, again, it's for me a very good start for a visit, that I have the opportunity to meet all of you. I'm sure you have some issues in your mind. I'd be very happy to listen to them. If there are questions, I'd be happy to answer. If there are suggestions, please feel free to make it openly but briefly. I'd be willing to listen. So once again, thank you. It's a great pleasure meeting all of you.